because they were not given the right to think of this place as strange. The pieces, have they all been gathered? Yes, they have. Well done. What a show. I wonder just how many people there are here. No matter how many we see, every being outside the 18 is a phantom. Making you acknowledge them is what my game's all about. The three witches were seated on special thrones, set upon a very high balcony. In the center sat the game master, Lambda Delta, and on either side of the semicircular balcony sat Bernkas and Beatrice facing each other. Below them, Erica ran forward, lifted the corners of her skirt and bowed respectfully. Great Lady Lambda Delta, we thank you for granting our request for an assembly. And Great Lady Bernkastel, my master, please look forward to it. Though it may be only for a short while, I will most certainly make my master forget about the poison that torments her. Yes, I am looking forward to it. I'd expect no less from my double, my piece. Erica and Bernkastel exchanged cruel smiles that make anyone want to avert their gaze. Listen up, witches and humans. I hereby announce that with this assembly of witches gathered, the Court of Illusions will now begin. The commander of the game spoke with words of power. Though her words are spoken within such a vast space, they ring out with the force of a bell in a bell tower. Your lives and roles as they correspond to this game are over. The 5th game is now closed, and the 24 o'clock answer session shall begin. Well, I'd like to get started quickly, but why don't we have everyone quickly introduce themselves first? After all, there are so many people here. Hehe. I am Lambda Delta, the Witch of Certainty, and the new commander of this game. Bernkastel, Witch of Miracles. My goal is to penetrate Beatrice's illusion of the witch. I am the endless witch Beatrice. My goals are to claim my own existence and to protect Natsui and Kenzo. Battler-sama. You come next in rank. I'm Ushiromiya Battler. I'm fighting against Beatos, no, against the witches. That's all. As I believe you know, you joined in on this game partway through. At the time this assembly of witches opens, you have yet to participate. Do you understand? I get it. You probably mean I don't have the right to speak for a while, right? Thank you for understanding. Even though Battler held a rank near that of the witches, he sat on the foremost of the benches, shared with the other relatives, all by himself at one end. He met the gaze of Beato, who was up on the balcony. You must have said you were my arch enemy. You might have said you were my arch enemy. Well, you aren't necessarily my only enemy. Humph. Let's take this game back. It belongs to us. Yeah. I almost said I was fighting against Beato's illusion of the witch. Since the beginning, Beato has been my only enemy. But right now, Erica and those witches who started toying around with Beato's tail are also my enemies. Who should I fight and how? Maybe it's a good thing I don't have the right to speak for a while. I'll calm down and coolly watch over everything. I am the detective, and the one who called for this assembly of witches. Furudo Erica. I will expose the culprit of the 5th game, and stick a charming period on the end of this tale. Erica greeted the witches above her, and the humans behind her at once. I'm also looking forward to it. Okay, remaining pieces, introduce yourselves in whatever order. Humans, introduce yourselves, all of you. When 45 urged him to introduce himself, Kenzo stood up. I'm Ushiromiya Kenzo. I slipped out of the study window and am hiding somewhere on Rakanjima. Ushiromiya Kraus. Currently I have been captured and am being confined somewhere. I'm Ushiromiya Eva. I'm alive. I'm Rudolph. The rest of us are all Ushiromiyas too, so I'll leave off the family name. I'm Rosa. I was killed on the first Twilight. Jessica. I also died in the first Twilight. I'm George. I also died in the first Twilight. Maria. I died, but look, I'm here talking. See? Dying isn't a big deal, right? I'm Ushiromiya Natsui. I am alive. Heh. Gah. Hideyoshi here. I was killed just a short while ago. Kairi. I'm still alive. Nanjo. Fat. I am also hanging in there. My name is Genji. I passed away on the first twilight. I'm Shannon. I'm still alive. I'm Canon. I'm also alive. I'm Goda. Pleased to meet you, everyone. I am Kumasawa. Pleased to meet you. Now, on to the witches. Everyone introduce yourselves. Okay. This kind of hurts my eyes for some reason. It's beautiful, but it hurts. Virgilia's group could also be seen. Unlike the floor Beato's group was on, the second floor had a balcony that looked like a raised audience seating, and they sat there looking down as though they were at a theater. My name is Virgilia. I am Beatrice's teacher. I'm Gape. Making corpses disappear is my job. Renove. I'm in charge of making black tea. Poo-coo-coo. My eyes. Jesus Christ. I greet you in the name of the Seven Sisters of Purgatory. I served in the murder of Hideyoshi on the second twilight. The Seven Sisters of Purgatory right here. Let us then have Lady Erica's furniture introduce themselves. Gertrude. I am an Assistant Inquisitor of Heresy. Cornelia. I am an Assistant Inquisitor of Heresy. The two of them could also be seen on the second floor audience seating. They sat apart from Virgilia's group. Then Delanar, who was seated between the two, slowly stood up. She held a presence and dignity about her, as though she was overseeing everything from that place. Delanar A. Knox is my name. I am Lady Erica's primary assistant. Battler. I expect much from you. Please don't disappoint me. Let's just both give it all we got. Most of the time, there will be no need for Delanar to step forward. However, when the witch side plays around with the ugly word games, I'll need to have Delanar convict them. A miracle, like the one in the study, won't happen again. And finally, let us introduce ourselves. We are the Cheister Sisters, Imperial Guards, who have been tasked with management of proceedings at this assembly of witches. Hello, everyone. Nyan, yeah. This ends. Nyan. Meow. Meow. This ends the introductions of all pieces. A total of 38 people are present here. I suppose I should introduce myself too. Greetings one and all to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. I am your tsundere streamer who doesn't stream. I promise nothing, I guarantee even less, and the only thing consistent about my channel is complete and total lack of any professionalism. I don't make any money from these videos. I never have, I never will. I have never made a single cent. I'll never make any advertiser money. I'll never have any sponsors or super chats or merchandising or anything like that. I have never made a single cent from any of these videos, and I never will. Just some crazy guy on the internet who talks without a filter while making videos, and I may find it difficult to stay focused at times, so I occasionally go on tangents or get distracted. I might have autism or ADHD or borderline personality disorder, depression, or any of that stuff. I don't know. You guys can make your own decisions based on, you know, how I am in my videos. But in general, it's just a place for me to be myself and just do whatever the fuck I want. I make videos because I enjoy it. I remember a long time ago watching people like Ultra J-Man and Rom Scout playing video games, and my phone is ringing. and that was a telemarketer. Well, either way. Main point in general, I'm not really doing my introduction at the start of videos much anymore because, well, we've made almost 4,000 videos. And when it comes right down to is this, you guys know what I'm about. It's like, if you guys don't know me by now, then you'll never ever know me. So, the point is, at this point, you guys know who I am. So, I don't need to introduce myself every video anymore. But, given the fact that everyone just introduced themselves like this, I felt it was only proper. And we went from being dignified and eloquent, as I sort of spaced out, as I was just sort of, granted, it was even kind of not exactly super clear because of the text and the graying, but I was staring at their tits. Just being honest, I started like spacing out, I'm staring at their boobs. I like boobs. I like her smile and I like the bunny ears. Now I'm looking at their thighs. But yeah, the boobs are nice. Just going to stare at their boobs for a while. And now that I've made sure to make everyone listen to this as uncomfortable as possible, I would say everyone's left. And there's no one left listening to this. But to be fair, there was nobody here to begin with. So, I suppose we should continue on with the story. Umineko is a very good story. Also, my voice has been a bit scratchy here lately. But I will say this, it's a very good story. It's a very, very long story, but I'm enjoying every bit of it. And I'm sure by the time I eventually get to the end of episode 8 of game 8, I'll want more, and there will never be any more. Same with Higurashi. Part of me wants more Higurashi, but I know that there will never be more Higurashi. But, like I said, both this and both Umineko and Higurashi are very long stories. But they're very good stories, and I enjoy them a lot. Hopefully, it's somewhat enjoyable for you guys to listen to me read them. Also, I'll try to avoid announcing when I'm staring at anime girl titties in the future. No promises on that. There are 38 characters in the 5th game, but if you added all the pieces from the previous games too, it would probably rise even higher. This game, which has so often been likened to chess, now has far more pieces than a chessboard. Very well, then I guess we'll get started. Let the person who called this meeting begin. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Goat, refill my drink. And some popcorn for me. Yeah, that's right. The one who decided demons ought to eat popcorn when watching a play was you, after all. Yes, I intend to enjoy this. And could I get some black tea and mustard miso? Does Berncastell's eyes ever return to the, you guys know what I'm trying to describe, right? How the difference between this eyeball and this eyeball? Like the equivalent of, I don't know. I do kind of feel like I dislike a bit how Berncastell and Lambda Delta turned out in terms of the original humans that, went through a bit odd experiences that formed the existence of these two. Erica, begin. I'm already starting to get bored. Yes, my master, leave it to me. Order, silence. At the sound of her voice, the Cheister sister corps straightened up and lifted their right knees and stamped down hard on the floor at their heels. Are they doing the bunny thumps? It became a low, deep rumble in the ground, and all the chatter in the cathedral disappeared instantly. As their eyes and expressions became even more hollow and empty, the room fell back into silence, almost as though they were a collection of wax models. Amidst this heavy silence, there was the sound of footsteps as Erica walked out into the center where she could catch everyone's attention. When she signaled with her chin, a goat attendant appeared from behind a pillar and carried a single plain chair out into the front and center of the room. It must have been the defendant's chair. I, Furuto Erica, will make an accusation. The murderer of the fifth game is... This is when I should hum the Tetris theme. Ushiromio Natsui-san, you are the culprit. Erica pointed at Natsui and spoke. Natsui's wax doll alone shook and regained its expression. It was an expression of panic. Cheister sisters, please take the defendant to her chair. Understood. Wait, what are you doing? Let go of me. 45 and 410 both pinned Natsui's arms behind her back and led her to the chair in the center. Natsui resisted, but the Cheister sisters were surprisingly strong and she couldn't do anything. She turned to the relatives for help, but they just remained silent like wax models. I, Furuto Erica, will now reconstruct why the crime was only possible for Ushiromio Natsui. Beato, of course you'll be challenging this, right? Naturally. I am the Ushiromio family alchemist, Beatrice the Golden. Furuto Erica, I challenge you. I'll take these false accusations you're trying to place on my master and tear them apart. But Beatrice... Fear not, Natsui. You are my master, and you are the true head with the one-winged eagle engraved in your heart. Do not fear a crime you have not committed. At those words, Natsui jerked back and gulped. Her panic finally disappeared, and she stood up straight. That's true. I am Ushiromio Natsui. I will confront any challenge that would disgrace the Ushiromio family. Giggle. How can you try a bluff like that in a situation like this? You really are the bully kid in every single fragment. So, Burn, make your claims. I, Burn Castell, claim that a human Ushiromio Natsui is the culprit of this game. And you too, Beato, okay? I, Beatrice, claim that the culprit in this game is not human. I am the culprit. Burn Castell, who smiled daringly at Beatrice, who smiled firmly, crossed gazes. Listen, witches and humans. Two claims have appeared for a single truth. Is the culprit a human? Ushiromio Natsui. Is the culprit a witch? Beatrice. If the witch wins, the truth about the fifth game will disappear into darkness. If Erica wins, the illusion of the witch will be wiped from the game board. In other words, for Beato alone, this is a battle that must not be lost. Are you prepared? And what am I supposed to be preparing myself for? This has always been just what I wanted. If Erica wins, the illusion of the witch will be destroyed. That means the existence of the witch will be denied. Beato was fighting for her life. However, this wasn't the only time she had been fighting for her life. It had always been a life or death struggle, even when she fought with Battler. Because if Battler had won and destroyed the illusion of the witch in the previous games, Beato would have been destroyed. That's dirty. Erica alone has nothing to lose if she fails. I wonder. Lady Burn Castell is not a compassionate person. I can't imagine she'd give warm treatment to a piece that didn't perform to her expectations. It was inconceivable that the ruthless Burn Castell would place no blame at all on a piece who had suffered defeat. I wonder how Erika Furude would feel about how Burn Castell is. Or, again, how Rena, Shion, Mion, Keiichi, how any of them, or the original Satoko, how any of them would feel about the way Burn Castell, or about how Lambda's, being. Erica was probably fighting for her life just as much. The two claims would clash, and one would be weeded out. Because here's the thing, not only in addition to all the 10 chapters of Higurashi that I read, there was also some anime-only stories that kind of bridge the gap. Plus, this guy's written many visual novels, but like I said, Higurashi and Umineko are the main focus. The two claims would clash, and one would be weeded out and one would fall, and one would not leave this place alive. The only ones who truly had nothing to lose were those witches. Okay, no problems. Get started. In that case, I would like to go first. The murders of Hideyoshi-san is very simple. It should be impossible to suspect anyone other than Natsui-san. Except for the victim and Natsui-san, all of us were in the same room, correct? It really was simple. Except for Natsui, everyone had been inside the parlor. And because it was so simple, it was decisive. No matter how you look at it, the one who killed Hideyoshi was Natsui. No, it's the other way around. No matter how you look at it, no one except for Natsui could have killed Hideyoshi. There's no room for discussion or debate. I'm telling you that's a mistake. Maybe I don't have an alibi, however I don't believe a lack of an alibi proves that one is the culprit. Humph, we know that Natsui is the only one without an alibi. But wait. The scene of the murder was a closed room. It should have been impossible for anyone, including Natsui, to have committed the crime in that room, except for me, since I could have done it with magic. I'll explain the closed room trick, the how done it, later. For the time being, I'll start with the who done it. Because of the aforementioned, it's impossible to suspect any character except Natsui regarding the murder of Hideyoshi-san. Milady, it may be dangerous to press any further on this. I agree. It's a fact that Natsui was hiding in the closet of Hideyoshi's room. When it comes to repeating things in red, they'll check to see who's in the room, and you'll be cornered. Probably. Lady Lambda Delta is the commander of this game. If it suits her fancy, she'll set up Natsui as the culprit regardless of the facts. If the typhoon passes and the police come to perform a scientific investigation, perhaps the true culprit will be identified, and the false accusations against Natsui will be lifted. However, in this closed-off Rockinjima, the police will not arrive for all eternity. In other words, the real truth will not be revealed. Inside this cat box that will never be opened, false charges that everyone accepts are worth no more or less than the truth. Their aim is most likely to use the simple murder of Hideyoshi to give the impression that Natsui-sama is the culprit, before moving on to the first Twilight reconstruction, which has more uncertain elements. It's not good at all to move forward with the Game Master suspecting us. We should take the initiative. Sure. Lady Lambda Delta, as you are well aware, a fair number of murders were committed during the 5th game, and we are skipping the rather lengthy chunk of the time from midnight until the early morning. Skipping to Hideyoshi's murder and stepping backwards and forwards in time will only lead to confusion. It is my belief that we should follow the events chronologically and in order, though the decision is yours, of course. Objection. In the process of prosecuting the culprit, chronological order has no significance. Objection. Furuto Erika is trying to mix up the chronological sequence in order to create a false impression of the events. Well, I'm not a fan of confusing things myself. I accept Beato's claim. Erika, start with the first Twilight instead of jumping to the second. Tish. I definitely saw Erika click her tongue. I understand. So this is a way of telling Rockinjima's tale. I was guided by Virgilia, met Beatrice, reached the peak from which you can see everything below you, and finally understood the truth of this world. This is that thing you were talking about earlier, Virgilia. Yes, that's right. Truth is very fragile in this place. As long as each side makes its own claim, different truths can exist at the same time. Yes. This really is a trial. Both sides put forth their own truths. This here truly is the Brawn Tube trial that Virgilia once used as an analogy. Then I will follow Lady Lambda Delta's orders and start from the first crime at the first Twilight. As you know, at midnight on October 4th, the first day, following a short break in the family conference, Natsui left on her own, saying that she was going to bed early. Therefore, her alibi is completely lost from that time until the next morning. The culprit is now Ushiromi Natsui because Natsui is the only one without an alibi. Oh, is that so? I believe there are several people besides Natsui who have dubious alibis. Unless you can clear suspicion from all of them, I cannot allow you to call Natsui the culprit. We cannot conclude that Natsui is the culprit as long as there are other people without alibis. What is this? Okay, am I expecting? The claim has been made that Natsui was the only one lacking an alibi between midnight and 1 o'clock. I was trying to read this. Midnight and 1 o'clock. This is being used as a basis for claiming that she is the culprit. However, as long as the following possibilities exist, it is impossible to conclude that this is the case. Was the crime also possible for Battler, who was in the guest house? Nanjo, Goda, Kumasawa, Genji, Kraus, people in the mansion. Is it possible George and others were just actually playing dead? Is it possible there's a way to reach the second floor without passing through the lounge Erica was in? Is it possible the crime was committed before midnight? Crime committed after 3 o'clock? Is it possible the crime was committed outside the time span of midnight to 1? It's possible someone in the mansion committed the crime between. True. If Erica is going to call Natsui suspicious so confidently, she's first got to show that everyone else has an alibi. Right, Byrne? Yes, of course. Erica will explain that perfectly. The culprit is rich because we will prove that everyone else has an alibi. Of course, my master. In that case, I would like to explain things in order. Let's forget about Genji's murder for now and focus on the crime in the guest house. For this case, you'd like to suspect the servants who were in the guest house, right? On that night, Goda-san and Kumasawa-san were there. Isn't that right, you two? When she turned to face the direction where those two were seated, the two wax models alone came back to life. They probably weren't even granted souls until they were allowed to speak. In that case, it would have been better if Natsui's soul could have disappeared as well. Natsui, who was in the defendant's chair, kept her soul the whole time and was constantly hanging her head, looking nervous. Goda hurried to his feet and answered Erica's question. Yes, that is correct. On that evening, I was alone in the guest house servant room. Well, look at my age. Staying up all night would be a heavy burden. So I returned to the waiting room in the guest house and went to bed right away on my own. Yes. Doesn't that mean Goda and Kumasawa have lost their alibis? Kumasawa claims that she was sleeping alone in the waiting room. Goda claims he was alone in the servant room. Either of them should have had enough time to go to the cousin room and commit murder. Nonsense. Why would we do something like that? That's right. How could I ever kill someone? We cannot conclude that Natsui is the culprit. After all, was it possible? Natsui said it all. Both Kumasawa, who was sleeping alone in the waiting room, and Goda, who was alone in the servant room, are in the exact same situation as Natsui in her room. Both of them have lost their alibis. Have no fear, I guarantee that neither of these two are murderers. First off, following dinner, Kumasawa-san left the mansion with me, and the others went to the guest house, entered the waiting room, and slept until morning. It's the same for Goda-san. Once he finished with his job, he chatted with us inside the lounge and went to sleep afterwards. Neither of them had the opportunity to commit murder. Humph. So, we're finally here. I see it's time for me to stand up as well. Your turn is already over, Erica. Go summon that bodyguard you rely on so much. Beato glanced at where Delanor sat on the second floor audience seating. However, Delanor just stared back with those usual expressionless eyes. Repeat it. We have absolute proof of Goda and Kumasawa's alibis. We refuse. Why give a hint to an enemy? There's no way we'd answer. Aha! Did you hear that, Lady Lambda Delta? They say they have no proof. How can they claim Goda and Kumasawa have alibis with no proof? Good point. What do you say, Byrne, Erica? How can you claim that Goda and Kumasawa have alibis? Fall back, Erica. My opponent is Delanor over there. A mere human like you can be no match for a witch. No, there's no need for Delanor to step forward. In fact, it's precisely because a mere human will defeat a witch that the illusion of the witch will now be denied. So go ahead, use the red and blue as much as you like. I'm ready for it, okay? In response to Erica's challenge, Beato smiled boldly yet gracefully and slowly stood up. And they glared at each other between the floor and the balcony. Goda and Kumasawa have no alibis. The two of them were in the guest house and could have reached the cousin room to commit murder at any time, unless you can deny that possibility. Nanjo was there too, and you cannot treat Natsui as the culprit. Beato's blue truth struck out rapidly. The curtain had finally dropped and the battle had begun. A human like Erica can't use any red. How could she turn this around without calling Delanor? Though Erica cannot use it, her master lady SkStI can. We mustn't let our guards down. Blue truth valid. What'll you do, Burn? Will you or Delanor step in instead? It is still not my turn, and it is not Lady SkStI's turn either. Yes, that's right. There's no need for us to show up for something like this. This is important precisely because a mere human like Frodo Erica will defeat you, Beato. Because you'll be defeated by a human, we'll know. We'll all know that the fake witch who calls herself Beatrice the Golden is nothing more than a subhuman phantom. Giggle. If you really could do that, it'd be totally entertaining. Very well, Erica. Let's see what you've got. Explaining it for the first person, Kumasawa-san is extremely simple. Kumasawa-san, stand. Yes? Kumasawa-san, from the time you went to bed last night to the time you were informed about the crime in the morning. Did you ever leave the waiting room? No. I was sound asleep until morning, I really was. The truth is, after dinner last night I had a chat with Ava-san, and she told me something very interesting. I tried that out myself. And what exactly is that? You don't mean... That's right. It's what cornered and sealed Kinzo in his study. I learned that you can create a seal by putting something between a door and the door frame. Are you kidding? Did she actually do that to Kumasawa-san's waiting room? Erica was in the guest house, so there's no obstacle to her having been capable of that. After all, it was an unsettling night and a massive amount of gold had just been discovered. Many sorts of crime might have occurred. Where there is a detective, there will be a crime. I foresaw that some kind of crime would take place, so I used this to seal away people whose alibis might otherwise be lost. Erica held a small folded piece of brown paper high in the air. After I watched Kumasawa-san, who returned to the guest house with me, say goodnight and enter the waiting room, I used this to seal the door. Then in the morning, when the crime was discovered and caused a big uproar, I immediately went to check Kumasawa-san's waiting room, where I confirmed that the seal was still set. Therefore, I can prove Kumasawa-san's alibi. Kumasawa has an alibi. Good. A wonderful alibi. Not a single gap. Kumasawa returned to the guest house of Erica, went to the waiting room to sleep, and never left the room until morning. In other words, after Kumasawa returned to the guest house, she never went to the second floor until morning. The proof Erica had shown was elevated by SkStI and became red truth. This truth, which had become red, could no longer be overturned even by Beato. In other words, in that incident, Kumasawa's perfect alibi had been absolutely guaranteed. Oh ho. Then what about Goda? Goda-san holed up in the server room right after reaching the guest house. I sealed him up the same way. Then, when Rosa-san returned at 1 o'clock, I happened to notice her when I stepped out into the corridor. I let Goda-san, who was still in the servant room, know this. At that moment, the seal was still in place, so from the time they arrived at the guest house at 1 o'clock, Goda never left the server room, and afterwards he was still with me in the lounge until 3 o'clock a.m., and after 3 a.m. I was on the second floor, so I can guarantee that Goda-san didn't come up to the second floor. Erica's seal proves that Goda was holed up in the server room until 1 o'clock, and Erica has proven his alibi from 3 o'clock, since she was passing the time in the lounge with him. And Erica has also proven that he has never set foot on the second floor until the morning after. In other words, after Goda returned to the guest house, he never went up to the second floor until morning. Goda has an alibi. Red truth valid. Well done, Erica. The alibi due to your seal on the door has been acknowledged by Byrne and elevated the status of red truth. Thank you very much, my master. I am the detective. I may be human, but I can use the red truth despite that and surpass humans. So now you claim to have surpassed humans? It's 1,000 years too early for you to talk like that, conceited brat. It'll be a pain to have you try anything funny, so I'll make this clear now. In fact, I should have done this in the beginning. I apologize for being so roundabout. This is the situation around the guest house at midnight. The gold was found, an emergency family meeting was called for, and Battler-san went to the mansion with the relatives. I, the three cousins, Dr. Nanjo Godo-san, Kumasawa-san remain in the guest house. I have already explained Godo-san and Kumasawa-san have alibis. George-san, Jessica-san, and Maria-san were playing cards in the guest cousin room. I actually joined them for just a little bit, and I clearly witnessed that they were alive at that time. My master, I ask you repeat this. Yes, I'll respond. At midnight in the guest house, George, Jessica, and Maria were alive, and in the second floor cousin room, Nanjo, Godo, and Kumasawa were on the first floor. And since there's no need to hold off on it anymore, I'll confirm that all the victims so far are dead. George, Jessica, Maria, Rosa, and Genji really are dead. How could they be playing dead with their necks sliced open like that? No murder occurred before midnight. We guarantee that George's group is dead. Thanks for repeating that, my master. If we hadn't made these things clear, you might have started going on about how they were already dead before I guaranteed everyone's alibis, or they weren't actually dead at all. Gah. Unsurprisingly, Beato's side couldn't get away with the simple plan of claiming that the victims were only playing dead, but in order to overcome Goda and Kumasawa's alibis, it should have been possible to suppose that the crime occurred before the doors were sealed. However, the opponent predicted this move perfectly. It had been shown in red that the crime did not occur before the time period covered by Erika's alibis. Got it. That's the last time the victims were confirmed to be alive. I wish you'd said that in the beginning. This means we can ignore everything that happened before 12 o'clock. To go even further, at midnight, Natsui, Kraus, and Genji were in a corridor on the second floor of the mansion. All the remaining people were at the family conference in the dining hall. Of course, at that point in time, no murder had occurred. Genji was also alive. This isn't something Erika observed, but we can't move the game forward without settling it. Very well, I'll acknowledge that red truth. Thank you very much for that red truth, my master. Since Erika had been in the guest house, it was only natural that she could explain the situation there. However, since she hadn't been in the mansion at the time, explaining the situation over there would have been extremely difficult for her. Beato would normally have attacked there with the blue truth, saying that the people in the dining hall had all agreed to keep the same story, that someone had snuck out of the dining hall and that they might have committed murder in the guest house. However, because Byrne had instantly settled that matter with the red text, Beato had completely lost her chance to strike back. Damn it. Very troublesome. To think we would be put at such a disadvantage. This is almost the exact opposite of Riche's fights with Battler. In fact, the situation might be even worse than it was back then. At a glance, the fight between the two of them resembled our previous fights. However, there were some vital differences. The first was whether or not Beato was the game master. The Beato who fought against me was the game master, so she knew all the truth. That's why she was able to use the red text at will. However, the current Beato isn't the game master. She's just a single piece on the game board. In other words, even Beato doesn't know the truth. So you could say that Beato is now the same position I once was. Also, though Erika may seem to be in a position I once was, the situation for her is totally different. She's connected to the witch called Byrne Castell. Even though she isn't the game master, she's capable of elevating Erika's statements to become red truth. Because of this, Erika can use red truth even though she's neither a witch nor a game master. Beato, who's supposed to be the witch, possesses no truth nor red she can use. And yet, the detective Erika can use the red truth. The advantage is completely flipped over to the other side. Perhaps you could say that the current Beato is in a much worse position than I was when I fought with her. After I got used to the game, Beato stopped responding to my demands that she use the red, but in the beginning she had responded to almost all of them, giving me quite a few hints. That's why we were able to fight on par. However, Bernkastel is different. She fully understands the rules of the game, and is prepared to corner Beato without even a hint of restraint. And because of this, I knew. In the past, Beato went easy on me, so that we could fight on par with each other. This has become quite an amusing fight. I see, so I must fight from the position Battler once stood in. Beato. In the past, I've insulted you and called you incompetent. I can handle much, much worse than this. It's now impossible to suspect Goda and Kumasawa. You can't win by arguing that point any longer. Yes, let's switch to a different approach. The next in line would probably be Nanjo. He was also in the guest house. Nanjo was in the lounge of Erika. However, I believe the time periods before and after that have been left open. That's right, I'll strike there. Nanjo, you were relaxing the first floor lounge of the guest house with Erika and Goda, correct? Yes, I was with Erika-san the whole time. And during what time was this? From 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. From 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Yes, that's right. It was the period between 1 and 3. Dr. Nanjo, Goda-san, and I were relaxing in the lounge. Repeat it, my master. I'll respond. From 1 to 3, Erika, Nanjo, and Goda spent their time in the lounge on the first floor of the guest house. Though she had flat out refused to repeat what Beato had told her, she responded to Erika's demand immediately. I feel like Erika's going to ask her to say something, and then Bernkastel's going to go along with it, and it's going to fuck them over, and then Bernkastel's going to hold that against Erika. And the red truth was starting to corner Beato. She grimaced as though in pain, but she still struck back with the blue truth. No, perhaps she really was in pain. Now that the characters apart from Natsui have had their alibis established, the illusion of the witch is also being denied. Beato perceived the denial of her existence as pain. Even so, he shouldn't have an alibi for the time period before and after you were in the lounge. It was possible for Nanjo to commit the crime too. That's right. I get that Nanjo was in the lounge with Erika from 1 to 3, but what about before and after that? What about that, Erika? Yes. First, the alibi for before 1 o'clock. This is no problem at all. I played cards with the cousins in the room until midnight, and then went downstairs to where I met Dr. Nanjo. That's right. At midnight, I met Erika after she came down the stairs and spoke with her, learning that she was quite the connoisseur of the mystery genre. I realized that I had found a kindred spirit. When I went into the library to solve the epitaph's riddle, I noticed that there were several original copies of famous foreign mystery novels stored there, so I wanted to discuss them with the actual books in hand. We moved to the library and were talking the whole time, constantly until we moved to the lounge. Cramped though it was, the book storage room in the guest house was stocked well enough that it was fair to call it a small library. In it, several famous foreign mystery novels that Kinzo had once taken a liking to. Of course, they were all originals and in English, but English was no problem for either Erika or Nanjo. For this occasion, they had borrowed the key to the library one more time from Goda in the servant room. At that point, Erika checked the seal again and, of course, reset it. Damn her. Even though she keeps it sealed for anyone else to enter or leave, she alone enters and leaves whenever she wants. I see. So, from midnight to 3, when you went to sleep, you were with Nanjo the whole time. That means Nanjo's alibi is the most rock solid of them all. Yes, that's it exactly, my master. Repeat it. I'll respond. After midnight, Erika was with Nanjo the whole time until 3 a.m. At midnight, the crime in the cousin room still hadn't occurred. So this way, an alibi has been established for the period before the time they were in the lounge. After that, we walked out of the library and into the hallway at 1 o'clock. Here's the thing. Is it possible for the crime to have been committed after Battler was in there? Like, basically, like, what if you pumped an anesthetic gas into the very small cousin room and put everyone into a state of unconscious from, anesthesia. And then you went in with a gas mask and then hacked everyone to death with an axe in their neck, but, didn't, stab Battler with the axe. And then let him wake up after venting the stuff. Is that one, I do think it's possible, and it does extend the timetable when the crime could have occurred. Again, dear writer of this game story, I'm making your game worse. Like, every time I have a theory, it's more fucked up than your actual game is. I think that says horrible things about me. After that, we walked out of the library and into the hallway at 1 o'clock. When we did, we just happened to bump into Rosa-san as she returned. I then told Goda-san about that. I figured, as I burped, it was probably a servant's responsibility to welcome in a guest. Goda asked if he should bring a towel, but Rosa refused. She quickly headed up to the second floor. At this point, Erika, Goda, and Nanjo gathered together and decided to have a drink. Their alibis in the lounge up until 3 o'clock have already been proclaimed red, so there are no problems there. Let's continue on after 3. This is Dr. Nanjo's alibi after we split up. 3 a.m. Battler-san returned to the people in the lounge and went their separate ways. Dr. Nanjo, Battler-san, and I went to the second floor. I then said goodnight to the Dr. Nanjo. At this time, of course, I put a seal on the door to the doctor's room as well. And it went unchanged until the crime was discovered. I flew out of my room at the same time as Battler-san's scream. I checked to see that the door to Dr. Nanjo's room was still sealed. Therefore, Dr. Nanjo's alibi is perfect before 1 and 3 o'clock. I mean, but here's the thing. If someone else noticed the seal, they could fix it, couldn't they? I feel like my guess that the anesthetic gas will never be brought up. I'm pretty sure it's an idea that the writer of this story never even has heard of. Splendid, Erika. Both your seal and your red truth are perfect. Nanjo had the alibi of being with Erika until 3 o'clock, and he didn't leave his room after 3 o'clock until morning. Erika made use of the seals on the doors, and was granted red truths from Bernkastel one after another. For me, demanding that Beato repeat something had been about maneuvering and tactics, but it's totally different for Erika. For her, it's like having a trump card that can make red whenever she wants. This concludes the proof of alibis for all suspects in the guest house. Any problems? I do have a problem, and that problem is, Beato racked her brains to find some point to latch onto, but Erika's red had been ruthlessly perfect. There was no point she could take issue with. Beato kept thinking hard, trying to fault Erika on something, but her expression was so wrought with desperation that anyone can tell by looking. Beato's complaint is rejected. I can't sense any problems at all. It's totally pop, cute, and perfect. Alibis for all humans in the guest house have now been proven. Wait a sec, Erika. Are you trying to leave me out of this? Ushiromi Battler also should have had a chance to commit the crime. After all, I was in the same room as all the victims all night. Again, my idea is this. I think that, obviously I don't think Battler committed the crime, but I think the crime was committed after Battler returned. So I think when Battler came into the room to go lay down and sleep, I think everyone was still alive and well. And then they pumped in anesthetic gas into the room, putting everyone in like a tiny little mini coma. And then the murderer came in wearing a gas mask and chopped everyone in the neck with an axe, except Battler, and then left. And also, he opened the window and let the gas vent out. So they wouldn't know. Because, technically when it comes to doctors, one of the highest paid doctors are anesthesiologists. Because, well, not only is there a lot of things that those kinds of drugs can interact with in a very bad way, but also if you get the dosage wrong, people die. You either, didn't use enough and they wake up during the middle of surgery, or you use too much and they never wake up ever again. I'm not going to let you skip past the part while ignoring me. What is happening? At the time, an arrow twisted like a golden snake and hit me. It didn't pierce through me, but it slapped me hard in the cheek like a whip. Battler-sama, your right to speak has not yet been recognized. Be warned. Ow! Damn it! You know, you could have asked first. You didn't have to immediately resort to physical violence. Do I get told when I'm allowed to speak? Will I be informed of this? Like once it actually hits the exact millisecond I'm allowed to speak, will I be told then? Yeah, I understand, Battler, and my apologies, forgive me. Erica, you still haven't shown alibi for Battler. Battler is the man who was sleeping alongside the victims. But yeah, my idea is probably never going to come up at all, is it? Shouldn't he be placed under suspicion more than anyone else? Was the crime also possible for Battler, who was in the guest house? Beato's right. You can't go skipping Battler like that. My apologies. I had completely forgotten. After Battler returned at 3 o'clock, you went up to the second floor with him, and I believe you also went to your own room and slept. You may have gone to the cousin room at 24 o'clock, but I don't think you went there after 3 o'clock. And then, honestly, the anesthetic gas idea is the only thing that makes sense, because here's the thing. Whether Battler committed the crime or someone else committed the crime beforehand, I mean, what, you're telling me everyone's perfectly asleep? I mean, some people have fucking insomnia. I'd expect George to be like laying there in bed thinking about the thing with Shannon. Heck, he was planning on surprising Shannon with that engagement ring. And Jessica was really pissed about stuff. And Maria just didn't want to go to fucking bed. You're telling me they went to sleep like they were supposed to? But at that point, it's like, why were they asleep when Battler came back? They're 3 a.m. They're probably super exhausted. But it also tells me this. I would expect, George would have snuck out to meet with Shannon. Like he's done in every story. But the other thing is this. Even if they're all laying there, like, you can't just go up to a person in a room and hit the person with an axe. Like, even if you don't wake them up with the person being stabbed, I mean, are the other people not going to notice? Will you now claim that you went to crawl into Battler's bed later on? Well, if you say you were looking at Battler's sleeping face all night, longing to confirm his alibi in the cousin room, then I'd accept it, right? Yes, I listened to him breathing in his sleep all night long. Got a problem with that? I feel like Beato's going to get jealous of that remark. What? If you're actually not joking, I mean, imagine Battler's going to feel a bit uncomfortable about this. It's like you were in my room watching me. Wait. Problem. If Erica came into the room and was closely observing Battler, how did she not know that the other people in the room had been murdered? Because if anything, she's the person who should be the most observant at this point, right? So she would have noticed the other people being killed. Obviously, she's fucking with Beato. I, Furuto Erica, can prove that Battler-san returned to the cousin room at 3 a.m., that he went straight to bed afterwards, and then he went straight to sleep. And I can prove that until he woke up, noticed the gruesome situation the room was in, and let out a scream. Nothing happened in that room. So, you have no need to worry. Battler-san isn't the culprit. He's just the charming first discoverer who entered the murder scene without realizing it was one and slept until morning. That's insane. We've met someone that even Beato feels like, oh my god, this person's out of their fucking mind. Jesus. It shouldn't be possible for you to prove that with those seals you love so much. How can you prove this? That's ridiculous. At that time, I entered the room alone. Erica probably went into her room too. How can she say something like that as though she saw the whole thing? She never said she saw it. The room Erica was assigned to, where was it located? Erica, please tell me, how can you prove so much about Battler? Giggle. Burn Castell, are you thinking of something lewd? Are you looking at hentai during this court proceedings? That's not very professional. I'd expect no less from a true detective. That is not what I'd expect you to say, Burn Castell. I would expect it to be, I'd expect no less from my double. It's like fucking Naruto doing something pervy and Jiraiya being like, I'd expect nothing less from my disciple. My room was right next to the cousin room. There was only a single thin wall between them. You don't mean you put your ear against the wall to check what was happening in the cousin room? Yes, my ears are perfect. Right after Battlerson entered the room, I put my ear against the wall and checked to make sure nothing strange happened. You said you could prove that nothing happened until Battler let out a scream the next morning. You don't mean... Yes. I put my ear against the wall and listened in on that room until morning without sleeping a wink. Did you ever sleep? How are you not dead? Okay, again, this game supposedly takes place in the 80s. I wasn't even born during the time period this game takes place. Red Bull had not been invented yet. How did you stay up all night? You don't have Red Bull. There are no Monster energy drinks in the guest house. You don't have Full Throttles or Rock Stars or Amps. Everyone was stunned into silence. She put her ear against the wall, and for the entire time till morning, she listened to what was going on in the Battler's room. Just what would that have looked like? Until dawn, she had killed her breathing in a pitch-black room, clinging to the wall shared with the cousin room, like some kind of creepy venomous spider clinging to the wall of a darkened room. Burn Castell alone was grinning in triumph. Due to the progression of the game, I realized that Battler, the one who had received the head's ring, would be a key player. I was sure that Battler would be a victim of the first Twilight. Yes. So, just as my master told me to do, I put my ear against the wall until morning without a wink of sleep, checking to make sure nothing unusual happened. Erica has a photographic memory, and her hearing ability is on par with a tape recorder. It would have been impossible for him to deceive Erica's ears, either to kill George and the others, or make those wounds on their throats. This also establishes that they had to be dead before Battler arrived. I still think the anesthetic gas an option, but even then, wouldn't the people on the other floor have heard the killing noises? It's an accepted power of the detective's authority. I have no choice but to acknowledge it. I'll confirm in red Ushinomiya Battler returned to the cousin room at 3 a.m. and fell asleep. After that, until the discovery of the crime, absolutely nothing out of the ordinary happened in that room. In other words, it was impossible for Battler to commit the murder or damage the corpses. The red from the pair forced Beato to show an expression of considerable anguish. It was only natural. Those red truths not only guaranteed Battler's alibi, but a number of other things as well. First off, it meant the murder was impossible for anyone after 3 a.m., and since the cousins were confirmed to be alive as late as midnight, the time period of the crime automatically became between midnight and 3. That meant the alibis for all the people who weren't in the guest house before 3 a.m. had also been guaranteed automatically. But here's the thing. Even if Natsui was the one who committed the crime, how did she leave the mansion undetected, make it to the guest house undetected, and then even make it into the guest room for the cousins in the guest house without anyone in the building noticing her? Then how did she murder everyone without anyone hearing anything. And then she was able to leave the guest house undetected, make it back into the mansion undetected. It is impossible for the crime to have occurred after 3 o'clock. That one hurts. I didn't get to read whatever that was. A lot. At midnight, Erica was in the guest house the whole time, so it should have been difficult for her to prove alibis for all of the people in the mansion. It should have been impossible to prove alibis for Ava and the others, but now all she has to do is prove that they never visited the guest house between midnight and 3, and she can prove those alibis. Anyway, we'll have to construct it so that the murders were possible before 3 a.m. And we have to prove that it was possible for one of the people in the mansion to do it. The people who had been in the guest house all had alibis. The crime didn't occur before midnight. The crime couldn't have occurred after 3 o'clock. In other words, there was no way for the murders to happen unless someone from the mansion committed the crime between midnight and 3. In order to protect Natsui, she had to establish that it was possible for someone other than Natsui to commit the crime. Ironically, the witch had to prove that a human had committed the crime. Still, this is getting pretty difficult. Until 3 o'clock, Erica was in the lounge, and you have to pass through there to reach the second floor. In other words, she's practically a manager for the guest house's second floor. This tactic may be a bit overused, but if it was possible for someone to go up to the second floor without Erica noticing, we should be able to prove that the crime was possible for anyone. It's probably possible for a human to climb up to the second-story window if they really wanted to. Of course, Beato had also thought of striking back that way, and Bern Castell must have thought this as well. Battler, Nanjo, Goda, Kumasawa, we realized that the crime was impossible for all these people in the guest house. However, what about the humans in the mansion? As I've already said, as my master has even proclaimed with the red truth, I was in the lounge on the first floor of the guest house, and to reach the second floor one must pass through the lounge. In other words, it was impossible to reach the second floor without me seeing it. And what if that wasn't impossible? For example, if someone placed a ladder against the outer wall of the guest house and snuck in through a second-story window, there must be a way to reach the second floor without passing through the lounge. That way it would be possible to reach the crime scene without you seeing it. Beato finally struck back. Before now, she'd let Erica take total control and attack her with the red over and over. During that time, Beato's counterattacks with the blue have been few in number, even including this one. Of course, I knew you'd try saying that. I couldn't have my lookout in the lounge become meaningless, so first I must prove my lookout was perfect. First off, because of how the guest house is constructed, it's impossible to reach the second floor without me seeing it from the lounge. There are no places under cover, nor are there any physical or mental blind spots. My master repeated. It is impossible for someone to reach the second floor of the guest house without anyone in the lounge noticing. But here's the problem. Doesn't this prove a witch in that situation? If it is impossible, if it is indeed impossible for anyone to make it into that room to kill the people, then how was it possible for Natsui to do it? Yes, you've proven that no one else could do it, but at that point, how can Natsui do it? How would it have been possible for her to do it? Even if there's no alibi and there's nothing that, like, okay, yeah, well, you can't prove that she was in a room, but you can. But with this statement, you have proven that she didn't go into the room to kill the people. So you've proven that she can't be there. Though, of course, this only refers to reaching the second floor from inside the building. Good, my master. So next is Lady Beatrice's theory. There might be a way to reach the second floor from the outside. This really is a problem. After all, there are trees that could probably be climbed and someone could have used a ladder. Even crawling up the rain gutter can't be ruled out as impossible. But I can't let you do that. Oh, you won't let me, and how is that? Did you stay up all night circling the guest house? No, you couldn't do that. You were in the lounge. From the lounge, you can only see a small part of the outer perimeter through the window. That's true. I couldn't prevent all methods of climbing up to the second floor from the outside. However, I was able to prevent all entry to the second floor. Prevent entry. I had already foreseen this move. How terrifying that she would be so persistent. Because of how the guest house is constructed, the windows are the only method of entry from the outside of the second floor. The lock's not important at all. I only had to prove that none of the windows or shutters were opened even once. After I witnessed the location of the hidden gold, I returned to the guest house and immediately began severing all methods of entry to the second floor of the guest house that didn't pass through the lounge. Yes, it's exactly the same. No different from the rest. No, don't tell me. You used that seal of yours on all the windows of the guest house in that weather, dressed like that? Well, I did have my swimsuit from when I drifted here. You're insane. At a house where you were welcomed as a guest, you did something like that in the middle of the rain, even though nothing had happened yet. For a normal human, it would have been an action so suspicious as to be completely impossible. However, she is the witch's piece. In the middle of all that rain, Erica sealed all the windows from the outside to create an alibi showing that no one could have snuck into the guest house from the outside. She climbed up the wall herself and did that to all the windows on the first and second floor. No, to all things that could possibly have permitted entry. Although after hearing that she'd listened to the cousin room all night long, without even sleeping a wink, this new bizarre action didn't seem quite so impossible. This probably also looked like a venomous spider, a disgusting spider crawling over the guest house wall during a storm. A rainstorm. You? Just what do you think of this Ushiromiya family? Is this how you repay us for welcoming you as a guest? To a detective, the Ushiromiya family is nothing more or less than the stage upon which the crime occurs. Before the outbreak of the crime, it was important for me to memorize the names of the characters, memorize the lay of the land, and prepare for the upcoming crime by devoting my time towards collecting and creating all possible alibis. From my perspective, detectives who don't prepare anything before the outbreak of the crime are pretty third-rate. After all, we all know that someone will die wherever we spend the night. Furthermore, at the time the crime was discovered, Erica confirmed that none of those seals had been broken. That's why Erica wasn't the first one to reach the cousin room when the corpses were found. Even without inspecting the corpses, she could be certain of several things thanks to the Red Truth. It was more important to check the seals and construct alibis. My master is perfect. All I did was prove everything perfectly by following my master's orders. Well done, Erica.